Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe, CMO of Gamefound, and it's time for our October Feast event. I feel like every time I do one of these, I tell you it's our largest feast event ever, and with 12 games for you today, it is once again our largest feast event ever. We have a variety of games for you, spanning a wide variety of genres, and it's just in time for Essen, which means if you're at Essen Game Fair, well, you may have a chance to go ahead and check out some of these games, these prototypes from the creators, and if you're not at Essen, then great, we have your FOMO covered. You don't have to go traveling across the world to go ahead and see new games. We have you covered right here and now with these 12 games. And now there's a lot to go through today, so we're going to jump straight into it, starting off strong, talking to Andrew Navarro from Earthborne Games about his upcoming new project, Hubworld Idolon. So after two massively successful campaigns for Earthborne Rangers, your next campaign, Hubworld Idolon, I don't know a ton about it, but I do know that you're going from a cooperative card game with Earthborne Rangers to a competitive card game with Hubworld Idolon. Can you tell us a bit more about how the game plays, the differences, aside from competitive versus cooperative, or even why that choice? Can you tell us a bit more about the differences between the games?
Yeah, well, I think they're incredibly different. I mean, I'm a big fan of card games. I've always enjoyed card games, be they cooperative or competitive. And this is a game that we've been working on for, man, I think at least 2.5 years now. So it's just kind of been like simmering in the background. But when I played it for the first time, it was brought to me by Corey DeVore, who is one of the designers on it, also designed by Michael Boggs. But when he showed it to me for the first time, I was like, "Oh my gosh, we have to publish this." But we were, still working on getting the first Kickstarter of Earthborne Rangers done. So we've been working on in the background all this time and really bringing it together. And it's something that I'm really excited about because I feel like the collectible card game market, I think right now is kind of the domain of that competitive, like, I want to say
TCG,
crunchy,
LCG.
but like more thoughtful, like complex card games. That's really been a space that's really been owned by the collectible market these past several years. And I feel like there just keeps to be more and more and more collectible games coming out. And I remember a time, back, 10, 12 years ago, or I guess it was even before that, maybe like 14 years ago, where I felt like that there was a nice response to the collectible market where you could play a game like this without having to chase a bunch of rares and ultra rares and, buy a bunch of cards you don't need to play a game that you enjoy. So I'm really excited to create Hubworld Idolon as one, it's a fantastic game. But two, it's a game that's not going to be collectible, but it's going to play like one of those games.
So to clarify, you're talking about more of a regular, consistent release cycle, but lack of booster packs?
Yes, no booster packs, but we will have a consistent release cycle. So the Gamefound campaign will be for the first set.
Okay.
And we're still working on exactly what all of the offerings are. We will have a complete set you'll be able to get, and we're going to have a 2-player starter as well if you're interested in just kind of trying it out. Pretty low price point. But then after that, after we release or fulfill the Gamefound campaign, then every subsequent 6 months we'll have a new set. The idea is to not go back to crowdfunding again. We're just going to use this as a way to launch the experience, get the ground underneath it, and then hopefully have a game that people can enjoy for years to come with consecutive releases every 6 months.
Okay, so and do you have like any kind of, I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around this over here. Is like, are you going to have future crowdfunding campaigns? Is it going to be a single crowdfunding campaign once?
It'll just be this one campaign is our plan, because the pace at which we want to release them every 6 months, it's a little too tight to do to continually have like crowdfunding campaigns, because we'll have to be having them while the other one's fulfilling. I think it's just going to be a mess. So the goal is that if we can do well enough with this campaign, and obviously we're also investing because the last Earthborne Rangers campaign did so well, we're able to invest into this campaign, so it doesn't necessarily have to stand completely on its own. But my thinking on it is that hopefully the campaign does well, but then over time, when people have a chance to play the game, experience the game, I feel like it will just grow over time, and then we can really invest in it and in the experience for many, many years, regardless of crowdfunding.
Very cool.
But back to your question about how the game plays. It's very, very different than Earthborne Rangers. Like Earthborne Rangers is a cooperative, campaign-focused game. This is not. This is a competitive, symmetrical experience that really brings to life like all of the things that I enjoy most out of those competitive card games. So there's a lot of skill involved. There's a lot of bluffing. One of my favorite competitive games of all time is Android Netrunner. I think people will find a lot of similarities between this and Netrunner, though.
But you said this is symmetrical.
It's symmetrical. Yep. Okay. But it takes all the things that I loved about that game, it prevents and introduces a bunch of new things. But I think, I guess, not to get too far in the weeds of like how Android Netrunner plays, but there was definitely an issue we ran into when we were developing that game where it became very, very deterministic over time, where it became more about, creating an economy for the runner or for the corp, and you just kind of like sit back and just wait till you have all the money and all the credits you need, and you just do whatever the heck you want. And I think we did some stuff later on to correct that, but I think that's just part of the design, and it's an old design. It's almost 30 years old at this point. So it takes some of those ideas that I really, really enjoyed in Netrunner, and then presents them in a way that keeps the game tense and interesting throughout. You always have a chance to come back. It's it's a great time. So we'll have a demo available by the time the Gamefound launches, so people can try it out for themselves. We'll have the rules available. We're planning on updating our project preview page pretty regularly as we move towards the launch. So
cool.
People have a chance to try it out for themselves. But I think it's really great. It's awesome at 2 players. I think it's even more fun in multiplayer, which is, I think, really rare for a game like this.
Interesting. I've been assuming this entire time it's 2-player only. You're saying it's more than that.
Yeah. We're saying it's 2 to 4, but I think technically the way the rules are written, you could play it a gigantic table full of people if you really wanted to try it out. It's pretty elegantly done, the multiplayer rules, and it works really, really well, and it does the thing. I'm not sure if you've played much like multiplayer Magic or any multiplayer, competitive games, where the game is kind of secondary to the alliances you're creating at the table, or trying to make yourself look like not a threat when you actually are the threat. The mechanics of this game work really well in that dynamic, and it's super fun.
Perfect. Well, looking forward to the campaign and seeing how this evolves, grows well past the campaign.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Alex.
Okay. Thanks. Now, Andrew actually spent years with Fantasy Flight Games, and so he's very familiar with how to make this kind of game, this kind of model, work well. And then obviously coming off of the massive success of Earthborne Rangers, I'm sure there's going to be a ton of you that are very interested in Hub World Idolon. But going straight from that to a personal favorite of mine, not a game I've played, mind you, or not a board game I've played, mind you, but rather we have a video game adaptation. A video game IP brought over to the board game space, which is certainly nothing new, but this to me is a video game that is near and dear to my heart, a game I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours in my youth playing this game, and a game that I kind of want to download and play now because I have such fond memories of it. Join me with Yarrick from Archon Studios as we talk about Masters of Orion, the board game. Yarrick, thanks so much for joining us today. Particularly, this is easily, then a little bit of a, I guess, personal note here, this is easily one of my favorite projects that we have in this feast. And that's primarily because the amount of hours that I've poured into Masters of Orion 2 over the years is an insane amount. Silence are easily the best race, just for the record. But separately from that, so tell me more about this. This Masters of Orion coming to the tabletop. How do you plan on adapting this massive 4X game to the tabletop? Is it going to be a traditional 4X? Something else?
So yeah, I'm also very excited about the Master of Orion. I put in like thousands of hours as well into Master of Orion.
So you agree silence are the best race?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it is challenging. It is challenging, but definitely the team who spends also hundreds of hours into this game wanted to translate that game as best as possible. How are we going to do it? There's lots of things we plan for this game. You will what you normally won't find in the full access games. We have advanced tactical gameplay. You have lots of miniatures, by the way. So playing those miniatures on the board is also tactical. You do have a diplomacy, also very, very advanced diplomacy. You have a conquering, you have fights, space combat fights and such. You have hidden agendas. You have, a lot. There's a lot to unpack in this game. And we wanted to do as much as possible and taken from a Master of Orion's games into that board game. We haven't focused specifically on in either of them. We do have some things here and there which we managed to sneak in from like Master of Orion 2, like some heroes, characters, some diplomats. Yeah, did I mention diplomacy? I didn't mention diplomacy. Yes, there's also diplomacy. There's also spying. There's politics. There is a lot. You really have to try it to see how many ways you have to actually win this game, because it's not only about building your empire and building the fleet and last final combat. It's really, really a lot of ways to actually finish the game and win the game. So the game will be quite large. It's a big box game. We're aiming out for around about 1 hour and 20 minutes per player. In the box, you will find 6 factions. But the best way to play is from 1 to 4 players. What is also there, quite important, is the miniatures. So there is around about 250 miniatures for buildings, for ships. Every single faction, they have their own miniatures. That was very important. What else is actually important to us as a company is that this project will be fully manufactured in-house in our factory here in Poland, which means we're not going to be using any more external manufacturers, which we believe we can cut the time on delivery this game for about maybe 4 or 5 months. So we will see how this one goes, but definitely we're also very excited from the point of view of manufacturing and having here 100% control over quality, manufacturing, shipping, and so on, so on, so on. We plan expansions, as always. We always do. The game needs expansions. We couldn't put everything in that one box. That box will be still probably size of the Heroes box, just for the core game itself. So then we have several expansions. I would rather keep them a secret for now, but definitely something to look forward, including one of them I can actually mention, which is create your own race. So you'll be able to create your own space race with the perks you pick from the list and so on.
I mentioned Silence of the Best, but you're right. There definitely is a lot of creative. I think it's creative. Was that the one? Is that the attribute? Either way. Yeah. You mentioned Heroes. Speaking of which, Heroes is in the last several hours on the campaign. Congratulations on that. Make sure anyone watching, make sure to check that out. But as far as solo, do you have plans for a solo mode?
There is campaign. There is campaign to try to go with this game with the solo as well. Yes. Perfect. But more about this one on a project page. Or perfect. Once we start the project, yes.
Excellent. Well, then I'll be checking out the project page, because this is, like I said, this is a game that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm very excited to see what you do with this, and well, again, I'll have to build my own race and go from there. Anyways, I'm very excited.
And conquer the universe.
Yes, exactly. Orion, conquering the universe. Oh my gosh, Orion. Well, I'm looking forward to the campaign. I appreciate it, and good luck.
Thank you.
Now, with Masters of Orion being so near and dear to my heart, I am both very, very excited for what Archon Studio does, but also a tad nervous. Although coming off of the massive success that is Heroes of Might and Magic, maybe I should be a drop less nervous. Although we are moving from one of my favorites to another one of my favorites, although this time not so much about a video game turned into a board game, but rather a publishing company, Orange Nebula, that is one of my favorite board game companies. We're going to talk to Tom and Mark from Orange Nebula about their upcoming title, Vestige. Mark, Tom, thanks so much for joining us today. As a company that has heavily invested in each of the titles you've brought to the gaming space, I'm very fascinated to learn more about Vestige. Can you tell us a little bit more about the arc, the flow, anything about the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Vestige is a modern Euro set on a remote moon where technology has fallen and people have kind of formed these underground societies to vie for power. And so the goal is to kind of gain leverage by making connections with people in the underground and getting them to do jobs for you covertly, orchestrating things and trying to strengthen your network so that eventually you can find your way off this moon.
Yeah, it kind of takes place in in the ruins of a once great society, and what's left now is sort of scrappy and survivally.
And mechanically speaking, how does that play out?
So the gameplay uses the influence engine that we created, and players use a single resource and kind of convert it into a number of other resources by investing it. Part of that resource management system uses what we call the alchemy wheel, that's tied to a color wheel with six colors in it. There's 3 primary and 3 secondary colors, and so you basically invest resources using this wheel. Resources in this game are going to be like ambition and cunning and ingenuity and those types of things. So if you think of a traditional color wheel, if you take red and blue and you combine them, you get purple. So in this game, if you take your might and your cunning, you use those to create ingenuity.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so essentially you have one resource and you are flowing it between these different states. And what we have found is that by building it to behave similarly to the color wheel, anyone that we put in front of it just intuitively understands it right away. And then people can use their energy on figuring out how they want to play the game, what they want to pursue, as opposed to trying to figure out how the game works. And it's just a more satisfying use of people's attention and focus.
Yeah, so there's a lot of resource management, but there's also some tableau building and a minor area control element and those types of things.
Yeah, the map is composed of tiles, each of which gain you access to a different action or effect. You build a tableau of cards that are, things like your human contacts and your bots, which we call chop bots. Or augmentations that you've done to yourself or your crew in a sort of cyberpunk kind of way. And there's lots of combos and efficiencies to find there.
Very cool. Now, as far as your other games have all been each in their own unique universes. Is Vestige in its own universe? Is it a shared universe?
It's a new universe for sure. Vindication is set kind of in a medieval setting. It's very kind of a remote island. And the idea behind Vindication was to basically try everything in a competitive, landscape. So try all these different mechanisms and explore how they work. And so it has a lot of options and a lot of things, going for it in terms of mechanisms. Unsettled, we kind of switched over to the study of collaboration and group cohesion and trust. And so it's a cooperative game. And then with Spiritfire, we dove into a single player experience, slow things down. How do I make decisions on my journey? How do I really, really curate things for myself and do character development and building? And with Vestige, it's much more of not so much an exploration, but a refinement of nice, tight, clean mechanics that are easy to use and remember.
Yeah, something you can really wrap your head around quickly and start mastering quickly. So that by the end of your first play, you feel like you're starting to gain mastery over the system because you were able to understand it quickly, as opposed to your first play just basically being a throw-out play because you're just figuring out how it works. We wanted this to be really approachable. It's not, we make pretty heavy games or mid-tier games on the complexity scale, but we are trying to make this is our most approachable game. And it is the most refined mechanically that of our lineup.
It's crunchy, but you could still play it in an hour and 15.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Now, speaking of the mechanics aspect of crunchy, the approachability, all of your games have had a bit of a different arc as far as where they were in terms of mechanics versus, narrative theme, all that. There's Vindication, which was very much mechanical focused. Expansions added a bit more to the narrative, but the base game started off very mechanically driven. Then you had Unsettled, which added a dash of humor, a dash of story, a little bit more of what you're trying to do going on into the mix. And then we had Spiritfire, which really heavily leaned into the story and your own personal journey. All three games, though, being very mechanically driven, just different degrees of story. Where does Vestige lie as far as both the mechanics and narrative aspect relative to your other titles?
Yeah, with this one, there is a lot of world building and lore and story that is in there, but the approach on this one has been more of a sort of environmental storytelling approach. So we have done a lot of work to build out the backstory of the world, build out the history of the world. We understand all the lore that exists for it. And then we are putting that into the game in ways that you can find if you're looking for it. But if you're just here for a mechanical experience, it doesn't get in your way. So things like, you know, how come all these characters' names are using a certain convention, but these characters are using a different convention? And why are these, you know, visual motifs repeated in certain areas? What does that mean about the world? And you can kind of, it's there, you can piece it together. I would compare it to something like a FromSoft game where, you know, the lore isn't in your face, but if you go looking for it, there's a lot of it. And that's kind of the angle we've come at this one.
Keeps us focused on the Euro part of it. Yeah.
Well, personally speaking, as a huge fan of all of your titles, I'm very excited to see Vestige, and good luck in the campaign.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
There's no such thing as a company that can do no wrong, but at least so far, and for me personally, Orange Nebula is a company that has done no wrong. I've loved every single one of their games so far, and I'm very excited to see Vestige and see whether it joins the previous three for me. But moving on from there, we've done a video game I like, we've done a company I like, and now we're on to a theme I like. Let's go ahead and talk about Rise of Mythos Cthulhu with Joel from Synergic Games. Joel, last time you were here, we were talking about the Harakiri reprint campaign, and now we're talking about an entirely new game, Rise of Myth Cthulhu. Can you tell us a bit more about the gameplay?
Yeah, sure. The Rise of Myth Cthulhu is cooperative deck, roguelike deck builder for up to 3 players. And as a roguelite, you will be, every time that you play, you will get some additional points that you will be able to improve again and again your decks, trying to get further and further to finally test your, I would say, body and sanity, confronting the great old ones.
So you're going to have unlockable content as you go?
Yes. Gotcha. You will be able to, each time that you will be starting, you will be getting new cards and new skills and more content you will be able to add, improvements, and so on. And also it will be for heavily cooperative. It will have a solo mode, but when played cooperative, players will be able to play cards for the other character, even playing cards with effects together. And some characters will be each of them have their own mechanics. So each of them you will need to learn how to use them, how to combo the cards, and with other characters as well.
How many characters will be in the game?
8. It will be 4 on the core box, and there will be 1 expansion available with another 4.
Cool. And both in terms of the mechanical change from your last game, as well as the theme of Cthulhu, why, for both those questions again, why the theme, why the mechanics, what drove you in those directions?
For the theme, we are a long-time fans of Lovecraft and his collaborators' work. We have been reading these their texts, their stories of the Innsmouth and Lings Hill. I don't know, all these locations, and it was always a world that we wanted to explore. So it was a great opportunity to be able to do so. And also for this change of this game will be completely card-based. We'll have no miniatures. So it will be an experience that will be much easier to set up and play. And for us, will be a project that we can focus completely on development, rather than all these things that go around this massive project like it was Harakiri, that we are launching the reprint campaign in less than a week, but we wanted to explore something in a smaller scale as well.
Gotcha. And then as far as a follower gift, do you have a follower gift on the campaign?
Yes, we will be offering a free comic that will be including the character's lore, so everyone will be able to explore the lore of each character before they start in a very, I would say, visual way. And also the style that we are giving to the game is some kind of dark comic, so it will be linked to this part as well.
Perfect. Well, Joel, thanks so much for joining us today. To those watching, go ahead and follow the campaign. And Joel, when is the Harakiri reprint launching?
Harakiri is launching on the 8th of October, and also for everyone who is willing to try to test this new game, will be available at Essen. That we will be there. We are like already there, and looking forward to see everyone joining us.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Joel, and good luck with the campaign.
You're welcome. Bye.
Synergic Games hit the crowdfunding space with their first game, Harakiri Blades of Honor. And they then took that to a reprint, and now they're continuing their pathway forward with Rise of Mythos Cthulhu, and it's nice to see a small publisher entrench themselves in the board gaming space. Although our next campaign is going to be coming from a far more established publisher. CMON is bringing Super Fantasy Brawl Reborn back to crowdfunding. This was big news when they took over the license previously, and people are very curious to see what they would do with it, where this would go, and now we can go ahead and talk to the team at CMON and find out a bit more about what you can expect from that game. Babas, thanks for joining us today to talk about Super Fantasy Brawl Reborn. As a game that I've played a lot of the original seasons of the game, a game that I really enjoy, I'm very excited to talk about this one, find out more. And starting off with, is this more of a reprint of the old content? Is it, expansion content? What is this campaign focused on?
Thank you so much, Alex, for having me today, really. To answer your question, just right off the bat, it's neither. So it's a brand new game. We've got new content, we've got 6 new champions, a new arena board, and a brand new challenge system to match them all.
Okay, so brand new game introduces a lot more questions to get into. Let's start off with, let's go through these one at a time. Starting with, are you going to be, is this compatible with the old system? Let's start there.
Yeah, so basically what we'll be offering is not only just the new content, we'll also offer an upgrade pack. Something that makes all existing champions playable in the new system. There will be much more needed fixes and retouches with respect to each champion's original playstyle. And those people who own the previous content can use them for the new game as well.
Okay, so following off of that, so we have new version of the game, new changes, big changes to the game. We have a compatible with the old game with the upgrade pack. Is the ability to get the old content on this campaign?
Yes, of course. Yes, there is. We're actually producing an upgrade pack, so people can actually get it from the pre-order campaign.
Perfect. Okay, so now I guess let's lead into the next question. Why the changes to the game? Why changes to the original system?
We decided that the game needed a brand new revamp, right? We wanted to keep the original playstyle of Super Fantasy Brawl that we got to love, but we decided to upgrade some of its past features. Its competitive play style made us retouch the way that challenges worked, and that introduced a brand new chapter in our designing and developing experience, and we really loved the way that it turned out to be in the end.
Perfect. So one last question. As far as what's going to be in the campaign, as far as what's going to be in the pre-order, do you have any plans for any crossover packs with anything else in the CMON library of games?
Sadly not a crossover pack or anything, but we do offer, however, 2 champion packs of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle line, and we are so excited about this, really. And these are not the only ones. There are also more bound to come.
Interesting. So basically what you're saying is keep your eyes tuned and watch the campaign to see what comes out.
Definitely.
Perfect. Well, very excited, very intrigued to see what's going to be there, especially what else outside that you can't say yet is going to be there. But Babas, thanks so much for joining us today, and I'm excited to see the campaign.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
Now, personally, I've always just been a fan of Super Fantasy Brawl, but I know a lot of you out there will be particularly excited about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hitting that game, as well as these spoilers and teases as to what else they have in store for us. Continuing onwards, we have game after game, we have things to be excited about, but continuing onwards, we have The Waste of Parts from Sky Kingdom Games. This is not at all what I expected from the company that brought you that huge, massive box that is the Isofarian Guard. But I will say, as soon as I started to learn a bit more about the Waste of Hearts, this very much seems like a game that'll be up my alley. Let's go ahead and talk to Eric from Sky Kingdom Games and find out a bit more about how this game plays. Eric, thrilled to have you with us here today. Can you tell us some more about the Waste of Hearts?
I sure can. So A Waste of Hearts, or The Waste of Hearts, is a 1 to 5 player co-op survival game, and you as a player are controlling this giant mech. You're trying to survive as it trudges through this wasteland, and you're trying to make it to the last human city called Sanctuary. If you ever played a game called Fallout Shelter, it's very similar in this game, where as a crew, you're salvaging in the waste and you're looking for pieces of other mechs that have tried to make it across the waste and they didn't make it. So you're grabbing these pieces and you're building rooms for your mech. So you're getting these room upgrade cards and placing them on a grid, and they're gonna give your characters different bonuses and things to get across the waste. So you've got resource management, you've got tile placement, you've got asymmetric character abilities. It is very fun.
Are players building out their own separate tableaus, or it's a shared environment you're building together?
So this is a shared environment. You're all in this mech together, and each turn when a player does, draw one of these cards and places them, you're going to be asking your fellow crew members, hey, can this benefit your character? Because each one of these characters has the asymmetric ability. That ability may interact with the room that you're placing on the grid. It could only benefit you, but you definitely want to think about the players you're playing with.
Gotcha. Now, your last game, the Isofarian Guard, is a giant box, a very big box with a whole lot of things. How does this compare in terms of scope and scale of that?
It is definitely the polar opposite of the Isofarian Guard. So definitely a smaller game, smaller footprint on the table. It's going to fit in your Kallax cube, unlike Isofarian Guard, much lighter. And specifically, I want to mention that we work with game trays a lot on the design of this game, both with the character dashboards that you're using and a special dashboard for the mech that tracks its various stats. It's got some really cool design with metal gears and arrows and cubes that you're going to be placing. I think people are really going to like that.
And then one more thing, just to get a little bit clarity in the gameplay. So you kind of mentioned these rooms you're building, this tile building aspect. You mentioned these characters. What's the environment like? Are characters traversing on these tiles? Is there a separate board aspect going on?
That's right. So each one of the crew members has their own standee, and during your turn, you're going to be moving that standee between the different rooms and different upgrade cards that you've placed. And you're going to be deciding whether or not you use the effect of that room, whether or not you salvage for materials, and based on where you are in the mech, your actions and things that you can do will change.
Very cool. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing more. Looking forward to seeing some of those metal bits and trays and all that. And good luck with the campaign.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm telling you, the art, the components look incredible, but more than that, the game mechanics feel exactly like the kind of puzzly experience that I love. This game went from not being on my radar at all to being one that I cannot wait to table and play. But moving on from there, we have our first reprint and expansion. Rock Banner Games is going to be joining us with a reprint and expansion, as I just said, for Seas of Havoc and the First Mate expansion. This was a game previously on crowdfunding that has been hard to get your hands on the game since then, and they're going to be bringing it back as well as new content for you to enjoy, either as a fan of the existing title, or someone who just wants to get their hands on the whole kit and caboodle. And let's go ahead and talk to Mike from Rock Banner Games about a little bit more about what this is bringing to the table. So Mike, Seas of Havoc delivered a little over a year ago, before Gen Con of last year, and I am curious why now as far as the reprint and expansion. Like very often we'll see things as soon as they arrive, as soon as they show up, there's immediately an announcement, the next crowdfunding campaign, take advantage of all the buzz, is generally well received. It's a year later, why now?
I would say there's primarily two reasons. One, when we do crowdfunding campaigns, we like to make sure we have all the artwork done, everything done ahead of time so we can meet deadlines and sort of overpromise or over-deliver, overpromise, whatever that saying is.
Under-promise and over-deliver.
Under-promise and over-deliver. And then the other reason is, in generally, we were critically acclaimed sort of in 2023 when it came out, and we were hoping to sort of get picked up, but there was this whole industry-wide sort of Asmodee distribution problem, and in my opinion, the game hasn't reached distribution like games in the past that we've have or that game deserved. So our hope is to also sort of re-kick it off and sort of let people. I think a lot of people out there have been looking for it and haven't been able to get it. I know there's a lot of scalpers on Amazon reselling it for like way more than it should be too. So that also irritates me as a publisher when, if we don't have copies on there for an affordable price because we don't have stock, and they're not available, and it's not available for stores to get in stock. People have to pay these scalper prices, which we want to try to solve a problem for that as well.
Perfect. So it's making it more available.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, as far as the game goes, it's an expansion and reprint, or reprint and expansion. What does the expansion add to the game?
So we're calling the expansion the First Mates expansion. So the big thing it adds is new First Mate cards that you can draft sort of at the start. And they're similar to your captain abilities, where the First Mate has sort of two things that they can do sort of strong, and you can build your deck around it.
Okay.
They sort of give you a jump start. They start in your discard pile, so after you shuffle your deck the first time, they're going to start cycling in. We've got some other things too. We've got new ship upgrades and different sort of more tech choices and ship upgrade choices, so that worker location is used more on the island phase. And then we're also adding in a couple new captains and some other things here and there as well. So it'll sort of all be combined into one decent-sized expansion package.
Perfect. So no major mechanical changes, just a lot of new content and then some small extras.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that will give you more variability, more choices as far as your start off goes. And then there's some like little minor expansion things, working on some like objectives that you can get. We're working on a way to upgrade your starting deck more efficiently by completing objectives. I think we're calling those like deck upgrades and ship upgrades. So there's new upgrade paths sort of within it that give you some more deck building choices.
Beautiful. Well, looking forward to the campaign, and here's hoping a whole lot more people can get it from you directly as opposed to scalpers on Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. No one likes them.
Thanks so much for joining us, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Now, while some of you are fighting to be recognized as the Scourge of the Seven Seas, others instead are fighting to be the Final Titan. Final Titan from Nerd Lab Games is going to be almost an auto-battler, but not really. It has a whole lot more agency than an auto-battler game, and it also has drafting, which I love as a mechanic, and it's going to have amazing art. The art, seriously, check out the campaign page for this. I think the art really stands out, pulls you in. Combine that with the whole idea of this fight to the death and these powers and abilities. All of that just sounds amazing. Let's go ahead and talk to Dominic from Nerd Lab a little bit more about how this game plays. Dominic, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey Alex, how are you doing?
Doing well, thankfully. Now, coming off of Mindbug, this is by no means your first foray into the card game space. Can you tell us a bit more about Final Titan and how it plays and how it differentiates itself from your previous games?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Final Titan is our second game that we do with Richard Garfield together and with Christian Goodall. And the game itself is it's a free-for-all. It's kind of a fun battler, and we call it a draft battler because you draft actual champions when you start the game. And one of the key features of the game is really that you can play it with up to 5 players. You could play with 6, but I think the sweet spot is between 3 and 5 players. And it's kind of this wonderful mix of you draft your team of champions out of 100 unique champions that we created, and then you go at each other in a kind of arena battle style. And it provides this kind of experience that you have like sitting together with a lot of friends, creating your team and being able to get off like crazy abilities and creating combos every time you play the game. It's very fast, set up super quick, and it's just really a lot of fun to create with the champions you have every time something new that you can build your team around. And it's all to become the Final Titan in the end, because there's only one guy who can win the whole thing. And but that's basically the gist of the game.
Now, the draft phase, I assume, is simultaneous, but in terms of the battling, is it just a giant one versus everyone? Like, is everyone fighting everyone, or they're taking turns fighting each other?
No, you have your team, and everyone has a team, and you send one. If it's your turn, and you start as well with some cards that you can use as upgrade cards, or have multi-use that you can use to skip your turn if you don't want to fight. So you're sending in your champion. So you always have to pick your battle. It's kind of the tactical decision is behind, okay, what's a good matchup for me? Can I go in? And then you send in your champion, and then the next player has to decide, do I play my card as a skip card and provide this as a bonus for the next player and just, being not fighting? And then the next one is has a turn and has to decide to go in. And the one who's going in is fighting against the one that is already in the middle, that is kind of the Titan. And then they battle it out with a die. You roll, and with each roll, you trigger abilities on your character sheet. And there are certain classic abilities like just doing damage, or maybe poison your opponent, or having like a drain ability that you heal up. And you have this one icon that allows you to charge up, which is kind of bringing your ultimate ability. And if you get to charge up twice, then you unleash your ultimate ability, which is often some kind of damage ability or cool upgrade ability for a team. So you have like support abilities as well that boost your team that is behind. Or you can have like bringing one of your champions to this ultimate form that he transforms and gets new abilities. And one of the super exciting things about the game is that there are a ton of characters that can kind of escalate. We always say escalate or explode, so that they become stronger and stronger and stronger. And then you have this Titan in the middle that everyone is kind of afraid to fight until someone has a good matchup or decides to go in, because you have limited cards to skip your fight. And sometimes you need to get in, but you can as well, if you want to go in, use your cards before the fight starts to upgrade your champion with certain abilities that stay until the fight, and can create some kind of new combo with your hero to fight against the one in the middle. And it's going round and round and round until the last man standing, basically. And every time you win a fight, you get a new card. So you have, again, the opportunity to skip or to upgrade your champions.
Very cool. And Mindbug is a game that you've heavily supported with multiple expansions or standalone, expandable, all that. Is the goal for this to be more of a single stand on its own package? Do you plan on continuing to support it?
Yeah, I would say it's not decided yet. What we want to do is for the next campaign is that this is a one box game with just a ton of content. As I mentioned, like we will have like more than 100 champions in this box. So you will get like a ton of content for that. We made like, I think that right now more than 8 or 9 artists are working on the game. There's a lot of art we created for the game, a ton of character. It has an incredible replayability because you always get new combinations. And we want to have the players to have this box experience that will take for a long time. It's basically made for an expansion or for another large box, but honestly, it's not decided yet. It depends a bit on how well it receives. I think the game is absolutely fantastic. All of our playtests, I had playtest session and everyone was loving the game so far, but it's made for an expansion. We could easily make another box with another set or even small expansions, but we're focusing on making this box really so much more content than a lot of other games that have this similar size, that we're focusing on this one box so far and then see how it goes.
Gotcha. And is there a follow-up gift in the campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. We will have a promo card for everyone following the game. That will be an exclusive card. I'm not spoiling because it's kind of a funny character, but this will be something that you will only get if you are a follower of the game.
Perfect. Well, make sure to check it out, everyone. The art on the game looks absolutely fantastic. It'll hook you as soon as you see it. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, and good luck on the campaign.
Thanks, Alex.
I think I'm mostly curious how well Final Titan handles different player counts. How well does it handle that range? Because past that, I mean, the art, the general mechanic of drafting, and then of course powers and abilities, all of those hook me in. From there, we're going to be moving on to our next campaign, coming to you from Adam's Apple Games, a company that has put out a wide variety of games, most famously Planet Unknown, which has been a smash hit, but they put out a lot of different games with a lot of different themes, and today is no different. Their next game is going to be Tatsumi, an abstract game that plays at a variety of player counts, speaking of which, and let's go ahead and talk to Adam from Adam's Apple Games about the game. Adam, let's talk about Tatsumi for a second here. This is a thematic abstract, and Can you tell me a little bit more about how the theme interacts with the mechanics on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Tatsumi, you play as a Tatsu or a dragon, and you are collecting elements at Umi, at the sea. And so the integration is really nice because you actually have to maneuver your dragon around the board, and each dragon has an elemental thematic ability, and so you can play as a fire dragon and collect resources differently than you would collect resources as a water dragon.
Okay, now this is a 1 to 4 player game as well, which is another thing that really stuck out to me, especially considering it leans into that abstract aspect, thematic, but still leans into the abstract. How did you handle both the solo mode as well as making sure it plays equally compelling at 2 and 3 players, at 3 and 4 players as it does at 2?
Yeah, the game was really developed at 2 to 4 players, but we have a really nice system here for solo because we have avatars on the game board. We can sort of reposition them and deliver a puzzle. And the game really relies on puzzle resource collection mechanics at its heart. And so it really wasn't hard to apply that to solo. And I think this category really is longing for a nice solo game in it. So we're really excited to kind of, do something unique and different in this thematic abstract strategy category.
Beautiful. And then the 3 to 4 player?
Yeah, 3 to 4 player. It's just competitive. You're just now blocking each other more. There's not really like any, take that type stuff, but it really is about your maneuvering, your positioning, your blocking, and because some things are, limited, you're just going to be in competition for them.
Perfect. And then lastly, I'm curious about how you approach game design choices in general, meaning you've had a variety of games. You're obviously fairly famous for Planet Unknown, but you've had games before that, after that. I haven't seen a rhyme or reason to the types of games you put out. So I guess what leads you to choose to create a game? What brought Tatsumi to life, and how does it fit into your catalog?
This is a giant answer, but I'm going to try to boil it down. The first thing that hooked me on the game design was the toyetic factor of a ring and an avatar sitting inside of it. And so when you move out of the ring, you collect the ring and it's just sitting on your finger, and like that just feels awesome. But I think as a like an underlying tone, I would say a unique component that delivers new gameplay mechanisms. So for example, I of course have a little show off piece here, but we have a 3D board that holds all the resources when you set the game up, so you don't have to like reload, refresh. It's just ready to go, ready to play, and when you clean up, it's ready to replay.
Perfect. Beautiful. As far as the campaign goes, do you have a follower gift?
We will have a follower gift, yes.
Excellent. Everyone go ahead and follow the campaign, and Adam, I appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks so much, Alex.
We're going to jump straight from the thematic abstract to a thematic stealth-based dungeon crawler with our second reprint and expansion. Earth Under Siege Flashpoint is coming back to crowdfunding with a reprint and expansion, new content for you, new content that will also mix up the game a lot, but join me and Steve as we talk a little bit about what that's going to bring. So I do have some questions around the Nemesis expansion, but before we dive into that, Steve, I was curious, this was your first project, this was your first campaign, near and dear to your heart, I'm sure. From what I've seen, it's been received so far pretty well, but like, how has reception been on your first game? How have you been feeling?
Feeling very good, actually. As a first-time creator, you're always a little anxious of how your game will be received. You can believe in it all you want. You can get some good feedback from playtesters, but until it's out there, you just don't know. And so far, it's been very good. We're running a 8.9 on BGG right now.
Nice.
Yes, and the feedback has been great, both from the backers playing it and content creators that are out there doing videos. Everybody's been very positive, so it's been good.
Beautiful. Well, speaking for myself, I'm excited. I already unboxed it. I have not tabled it yet, but I played the original prototype. I mean, you know that, but some people watching might not. I played the original prototype. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to tabling again. I'm just happy it's being received well by others as well. Which brings us to the expansion, to the Nemesis expansion. What does it add to the game? Like, what are you... I mean, Earth Under Siege Flashpoint, for those who don't know already, it's basically going to be a somewhat stealth-driven, invasions, missions, a little bit of a dungeon crawler, but more in a space setting, very heavily focused on stealth and a lot of equipment, gear, and items and all that stuff. But what does the expansion add to the campaign, to the game?
Okay. So in the core game, there are a series of side missions that you can go and fight with basically a mini-boss. And you get excellent rewards for fighting them. But what the Nemesis expansion brings is expanding on those missions. So we are basically reimagining those mini boss missions with unique miniatures to represent the mini boss, a unique boss dashboard as opposed to just a small set of rules. So it basically turns these mini boss encounters into a more involved adventure that's more challenging and more rewarding. So it's going to have a series of new tiles, all new miniatures for these mini bosses, and of course a mission book that goes over the differences from the core game to the expansion. And the other thing that the expansion brings is the Nemesis mode, which is basically a new way to play the game. You basically, or it's basically becomes a boss battler. So instead of journeying through the campaign normally, you actually just fight a series of bosses, one after the other, and it's got some of the things that you're familiar with in a boss battling game, such as breaking down your gear and gathering resources so that you can spend them on upgrades, and it's a whole new way to play the game.
And does stealth go out the window for that?
It depends on the mission. Some missions will have stealth, and some will just be straight up head-to-head battling.
That's fascinating. It's a major structural change, and I'm very curious how that plays out, but very interesting.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the game, for the campaign, although I will say, I mentioned at the beginning that, first-time developer and all that. Do you have other things in the works for your company, other games outside of Earth Under Siege?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of ideas. Hopefully we get to implement them all because we've got a lot. We want to do some games that are set in the Earth Under Siege universe, as well as a few things that are outside of that. The next thing that we want to do, that we hope to launch in 2020, late 2025 or 2026, is a skirmish style game that's based on the Earth Under Siege universe. It can be played versus or played solo co-op, but it's basically you have units of figures doing battle against the alien forces. So it's, like I said, it's a skirmish game, and it's very strategic about taking objective points and all of that.
Very cool. Well, that gives me two things to be excited about: Nemesis and, well, do you have a code name for that or anything?
Right now we call it Warzone.
Warzone. Well, whatever that ends up being. Anyways, thanks for joining us, Steve. Excited for this, excited for the campaign, and good luck on the campaign.
Thanks, Alex.
Part of what made Earth Under Siege Flashpoint so good was managing the stealth-based mechanics and how well the game balanced around them. So I'm very fascinated as to how they're going to make that pivot for the expansion while keeping the game's core at heart. But either way, we're going to move on to our next campaign today, coming to you from Boom Studios, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today. But Boom Studios is putting out as the next campaign the complete Jim Henson's Labyrinth graphic novel collection. Whether you've watched the movie, whether you've played the board game, or whether you've checked out previous content from there before, this is an opportunity to go ahead and get the complete Jim Henson's Labyrinth graphic novel collection, as well as every single graphic novel they've put out on Labyrinth as part of 2 beautiful hardcovers. Make sure to check out the campaign to see more about that. And we're going to move on finally to our last campaign of this feast. We're actually going to be joined by an old friend who you may remember from way earlier in this feast. We're going to be talking to Jarek from Archon Studios again, this time about Dungeons & Lasers 7, Porthaven, and the unique theme that they're bringing to this one. Jarek, long time no see. I feel like we haven't talked in forever.
Yeah, exactly, like 3 minutes ago.
3 minutes ago. Dungeons & Lasers 7 Porthaven. This is your first time going pirates. How is that? What are you doing to bring the pirate rule to the tabletop?
Okay, so we wanted to make pirates for a long time, but the requirement for our community was to do something else, so we were focusing on other thing, and we had a long list of things we want to do in the future, and one of them was actually pirates, and people requested quite a lot, so we decided to do that. We're going to start with a huge ship, massive ship, which is modular. You can make it bigger, smaller, and you can open it, you can go inside, and so on, and modify the way you want to modify. And on top of that, we also have a ghost ship. So there will be one clear plastic ship with UV light incorporated, which actually glows, and you don't need to actually play it at night. You're basically going to glow. So that's amazing. That's something new and new tech which we developed here. And then there's a supplement for pirates. So that's the big one, because I haven't seen anything like that. I always wanted to read up about the pirates, how to use them basically in fantasy universe, so how they live, what they do, what they eat, and so on and so on. We will also have the, let's call them the buddies version of pirates. Okay. So some kind of zombies pirates. I mean, stay tuned. There's lots of miniatures on there. And as with every single DNL campaign, this one will be 80% focused on miniatures and 20% focused on terrain. So slightly other way around than the previous campaign when we had like 80% of terrain and 20 miniatures. Yeah. So this time around, we're focusing mainly on the miniatures. So tons of NPCs, not only pirates NPCs, but also you will find a port. I mean, it's called Port Heaven at the end of the day. So there's some port people, some marketplaces, market stalls, and you will find also quite a lot of normal NPCs you can use in your RPG campaigns.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, Dungeons Laser 6 was the first time you brought Prismacast to the table with, pre-painted terrain. Are you doing that again for this campaign?
Yeah, probably portion of it will be available in the Prismacast. I will see if we can do an entire ship. Maybe ship will be fully pre-painted. That would be something. That would be something really, really cool. So that's that. But definitely, Prismacast is here to stay. In the last few months, we have just gained so much knowledge about this process and built new processes on top of that and increase the quality. It's just mind-blowing what we can do with that. Maybe at some point we will offer an entire line of miniatures and everything else fully pre-painted to the level you haven't seen it yet on the market. So, but that's future. That's future.
And speaking of here to stay, when I spoke to you about Master of Orion, you said you were doing all that in-house now. Is that true here as well?
Oh, DNL was always made in-house. So actually this company mainly started with plastic on DNL and Rampart. And then we gradually, every year, we grow and grow, increase machines, capacity, knowledge, and technology, and so on and so on. And now, yeah, we master it, I believe. So you may expect the best from us, obviously, as always, as every single project.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to see what you do with the Pirates theme, how you incorporate it, the zombie pirates, giant ship. You said a lot of cool sounding things. So I'm excited to see the campaign.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
Good luck. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
And with that giant pirate ship miniature, are they even called miniatures at that point? I don't really know the official cutoff as to when things change. But with the giant pirate ship sailing off into the distance, our feast comes to a final close. Like I said at the beginning, this has been our largest feast yet, and I'm sure that trend will continue the next time around. These things tend to get bigger and bigger every single time we do, and these games aren't all. These campaigns aren't all. You may have missed over the past few weeks and months on the platform, but there have been many, many campaigns announced, from a new Bard Song to Cloudspire from Chip Theory Games, to Neris Expeditions, and many, many more campaigns that might be of interest to you, and there'll be many, many more to come after this as well. I hope you've enjoyed the walkthrough through these next 12 campaigns on the platform. I hope something caught your interest and attention, something that may not have been on your radar but now is. It's going to be an epic next few months over on Gamefound, and we hope that you're along for the ride. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe, CMO of Gamefound, and as always, I hope you have a good one.